Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices, and you can sign up for product alerts. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. As 2020 comes to an end, it's time to put out some videos about the best games of the year. Now this specific video is going to be exactly that, the best games of the year in different categories of games. Now, a couple days after this launches, another video will come out, the top 10 games of the year. So if you don't want to miss those and you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe below, click the bell, and you'll be notified when that video comes out. If you're watching this and it's a little bit in the future, you can click the link below and that will bring you to the top 10 best games of the year. Now one little caveat about this video is that since I'm doing these in many different categories, there's some games that could possibly have won for multiple categories, but I only allow each game to win once. So you might hear about a game and you might say, oh, I wonder why this other one didn't win this. Well, it's possible that that one will win another one of my categories. So I just want to give you some insights to how I did this, so let's get started. For children's game, it's going to be Dragomino. This is for ages 5 and up. It's from Blue Orange Games. Now this is basically a children's version of King Domino, which is a very popular game that won the Spiel des Jahres, the biggest award in gaming. It's a game where you're basically building your own kingdom with dominoes, but on those dominoes there's different land types. And in the child's version, you're placing dominoes down, and if you match the land type that it's next to, you get a dragon egg of that land type, and you flip it over and you might get a dragon, which is a point, or not. But it teaches the kids a lot of interesting things because there's more lands of some types than others, and when you're trying to get a points from the dragons, there's only 7 of those. But since some areas have more eggs, then the probabilities change of how likely you are to get a point, and that teaches probabilities to the kids. Also, as you start to build things together, there's some combo building that you can do there as well. So it teaches some really good things. It's a fun game, and adults actually enjoy this one too. And there's also an advanced mode that really heightens the combo building as they get used to the game and they want a new challenge, or if they're a little bit older child. That is Dragomino from Blue Orange Games. For 2-player game of the year, this is going to be Stellar. This is a 2-player card game from Renegade Game Studios. I have a 1-minute overview of how this one's played. Stellar is a strategic 2-player card game in which you're stargazers calibrating your telescopes to bring into view celestial objects of various types, like black holes or moons. But you'll also be building sequential numbers of the different types in your own notebook. And for each of the different types, you'll be adding up all the stars in your telescope and multiplying those by the largest sequential set of numbers of that type in your notebook. But you're also trying to have the highest value of printed numbers in different sections of your telescope to win majority bonuses against your opponent. But you're also trying to be diverse by having at least one of each type in your telescope. And you'll do so with a creative mechanism of drawing a card from a row, playing a card from your hand, and with that number, also being forced to play this card that turn. And even with streamlined mechanisms, special cards add to the depth and strategy of the game that's played in 30 minutes or less. Yeah, this one is just a really unique twist on 2-player games. It's basically a tableau building game with cards. But the thing is, it's such a weird thing to wrap your mind around, because you're going to get a card, but then that's going to influence where you can place it and which card you can place and things like that. So it's like, it's really hard because oh, I want to go here, but then I got to take this card and so on and so forth. And you're really trying to focus on certain things. You're going against, and you also have the majorities of the different rows. So it's like, oh yeah, you want to have the biggest numbers in those, but those tend to not allow you to get as many points in the end for the multiplier. So it's like different goals are at odds with each other. And building out that sort of tableau of adjacent types of cards. And then the way it scores in the end, again, it's just a really interesting game. It's like nothing else I've ever played, and having the whole thing look like a telescope is pretty cool too. So if you're looking for a 2-player game that feels like nothing else, it has quite a little bit of a brain burnery way to wrap your mind around. It takes a few games to kind of really understand how to play it good. This is definitely one to check out. Stellar. For best dice game, this is going to go to Super Skill Pinball 4K. That's a mouthful. This is from WizKids Games, designed by Jeff Engelstein. This is a roll and write game, and honestly, roll and write games are ones that I've kind of burnt out on. There's been too many of them. Everyone's trying to capitalize on this, but this one is very unique. This one was actually in the running for Innovative Game of the Year for me because it's so different from other roll and write games. When you are rolling you're rolling dice and you're moving your pinball to different things. And the thing I love about this is that it really feels like you're playing pinball. The ball goes up, it goes through certain things, and then it's going to start sliding down, and you have options as to where to push it depending on your dice. But you can it's always going to be kind of going down. It's never going to be going back up, and that's pretty much like the gravity of pinball. But there's also other things, like you can shake the machine and try to get it to do something you want to do it instead of going down the side, but you might tilt. Pushing your luck there. It's just such a unique game. Even having the half of the pinball be sort of there, it looks like you have a pinball there. And the fact that it's called 4K because there's 4 different boards, and each of them work, generally the same, but they're all different. Like one of them has like a little mini game that if you get up in this area, then you actually have another little game that you're playing within the game. So they have different themes. Each of them have different things that they do. It keeps the game fresh. But all in all, it's just a pleasant breath of fresh air in the roll and write genre. Super Skill Pinball 4K from WizKids. For best expansion, this is going to go to Wingspan Oceania. Now this game, the reason why I put it best expansion is number one, it comes with a ton of birds, great new artwork just like before, but it also comes with a handful of new goals, one of which has to do with that great artwork of looking if the bird is looking to the left or if the beak is pointing to the right. Interesting new goals. It also has a new currency or a new resource, Nectar, which kind of acts like a wild, if you will, but does have some different ways that it's played. And then it also comes with a big board, new boards that you can use instead of the old boards. And I like these ones better because you start to get resources and things in earlier actions. It allows you to build your engine faster. And for me, it made the game even more exciting than before. So for me, best expansion of the year, Wingspan Oceania. Best reprint of the year is a game that came out very early this year, a little card game from Renegade Game Studios called Gloomy Graves. Let me show you how this one's played. Gloomy Graves is a spatial strategy card game for 2 to 4 players, where you'll be trying to build large grave sites of different types like dragons, goblins, cyclops, pixies, and unicorns. Each round, you'll be placing a card into a communal grave site that all players will be contributing to. You'll also be creating your own private crypt in front of you that can be as large as a 3x3 grid. You're trying to build those large contiguous sections of different types using grave diggers as wild, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Plus the 7 of them in the communal graveyard gives you 12, which allows you to score 6 points at the end of the game. Or you can push your luck and try to get 3 more, having 15 to get a whopping 10 points, but somebody else might take that before you. And since you can only score each grave site once, after you score it, you'll be cutting it off from other players in the communal graveyard. And at the end, you'll also be scoring bonuses for how many of the scorecards you got. Yeah, this was a reprint of a smaller known title in Europe called Rollnacy. It was a farm building thing. And this was essentially a spin-off of Heartland, which was also re-implemented by Renegade Games as a Gunky Mono. This is sort of like Gunky Mono, the card game, if you will, because you're building up your own tableau, but you're also building up in the general tableau. And I like that aspect. This, to me, I thought could have been in the running for Spiel des Jahres. It's that weight of game. But it's really interesting because they have different placement rules, and you're trying to be able to build things up in the middle and build things up on your board to score the points that you want, but it has a press your luck mechanism where it's like, ooh, do I try to get one more to get a bigger card? But if I do that, somebody else might cut off that color in the main board. And it's like people are going to be going for colors, and as soon as they finish it, they're going to cut it off themselves, because sometimes you typically work with people at some times throughout the game, and as soon as someone scores it, you better score it too, because if not, they're going to cut you off. And it's a very sort of combative game in that way, but it's really interesting, and I love just the aspect of the two different, the main pool and your own little tableau that you're building on, the interaction between the players. It's great. That's Gloomy Graves. Party Game of the Year. This is one that I think will be a classic for a long time. This is called Stay Cool. In North America, it's brought out by Yellow, and it's published overseas by Scorpion Masqué. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this one works. Stay Cool is a party game for 3 to 7 players, where you're going to be bombarded by 2 types of questions. One where you are trying to spell out the answer with dice, and the other verbally, but while the time is going, you'll have 2 minutes. These ones you'll be doing with the dice, like a place to lift weights. What is that? Ooh, it's always a 3 or 4 letter word, maybe a gym. And while you're trying to figure out what these dice are, this player over there is asking you, which has the longest teeth, dog, dolphin, rabbit, or shark? Well, let's say I spelled gym. They say, correct, it was gym. Then they ask me, you take this when you go shopping so you don't forget anything. And over here I say rabbit. It's wrong. They say, well, which has the longest teeth, dog, dolphin, rabbit, or shark? But if you finally say shark, you get it right, they go to the next question. This will continue until the round is over. Then you'll get how far you got down on each of them, multiplied, like 2 points times 1 point for 2 for that round. Then there'll be a new active player with new cards. There's 1,500 total questions. Second round, you have to say when to flip the timer. If it runs out, your turn's over. Third round, you can't see the timer and you still have to tell it when to flip. Whoever has the most points at the end is the winner. This game is just barrels of fun. You'll be laughing your butt off. You'll be laughing at how you cannot come up with the right answers of something so simple, and you just kind of laugh at yourself. And this game is definitely not for everybody, but even if it's not for you, it's almost as much fun, if not more, to watch it played than to play it, because you're going to be watching all the interactions with the players, watching them laugh at themselves, and you don't have to be on the spotlight, you can just watch and laugh. But if you are playing it, it's just so fun to try to multitask and think of these easy things, and your brain just like trips up and you're like, ugh, and it's just so fun. Also, you know, the game ramps up with having to flip the timer yourself or say when to flip it, and then also being able to have to flip it when you can't even see the timer in the last round, ramps up. It's just it's one of the best party games I've played in a decade, probably. It is just fantastic. Stay cool. Best presentation. I know the graphics have best artwork, but I've rebranded this as best presentation, and that has to do with art and components and sort of table presence. And for me, this one goes to Cleopatra, the Society of Architects Deluxe Edition. This came out from Mojito Studios. This game, you set it up and it's just like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this. It just looks so beautiful. The way that all the pieces of the palace come together, and the obelisks and the Sphinx and the Anubises on the top, and building the mosaics on the top of the thing, and the throne. It's just, this game, there's no way somebody would walk past this game and not stop and go, what the heck are you playing? And the artwork's great on it too, updated artwork, but this game, presentation-wise, this was the biggest no-brainer on this list, Cleopatra and the Society of Architects for best presentation. Card game of the year for me is just a little tiny card game this year that came out somewhat recently. It's called Ohanami. It's from Pandasaurus Games. Here's a 1-minute overview of how this game works. Ohanami is a card drafting game for 2 to 4 players where you're going to be drafting 2 cards at a time to build into your own gardens. When you build your gardens, you'll be building in sequential order from bottom to top, from lowest to highest. And as you add more cards, you can add to existing gardens or add a new garden, and you'll have up to 3 total gardens going at once. And when you add a card to a garden, it has to be either higher than the highest or lower than the lowest. At the end of the first round, you'll be scoring only the blue cards. At the end of the second round, blues and greens. At the end of the third, blue, greens, and grays. And at the end of the game, you're scoring the pinks for how many you've gotten. And when drafting, you don't have to keep the cards you want. You can just discard them, keeping them from other players. And at the end of the third round, your gardens might look something like this. And at the end of the game, you're trying to have the most points. This game has won this award because it's both simple, but yes, you know, it can be played deeper than it originally appears. You know, you're picking cards, and the way that those score through the different rounds, you know, the blues in the first, all the rounds, and the greens in the second and third, and the grays just in the last, and the pinks at the end. I love this because you can play this game very casually, talk while you're playing, passing cards, building your tableau, having fun, or you can play it very thinky, very gamery, watching what's going around, purposely discarding cards that are going to help someone else more than another card would help you, and messing them over, remembering which cards you passed and thinking that as you load your other cards and hoping that those come back, watching if those cards got taken so you know if they've taken. You can play this game at a very high level once you know the game well, but it's still very easy to play on your first play for new players, and that's why it made this game Card Game of the Year, Ohanami. Plus you can come back from way behind with those pink cards, which gives you a different goal and a different angle. Loved it. Ohanami. For Innovative Game of the Year, this goes to Micro Macro Crime City. And Micro Macro is one word, by the way. This is from Pegasus Spiel. In this game, there are 16 different crime cases. This is a cooperative game where you're all trying to solve a crime in this huge but little city. The map is huge, but you're looking at different things. You're looking at all the different things in the city. Each case asks you about a specific person, shows you what they look like, shows you maybe where they live, and you're trying to work your way backwards, and you'll be asked certain questions about the crime, like what happened to them, where did it happen, where did the perpetrator live, where were they hiding out, things like that. And you're working your way, and this city's so cool because it basically is like a snapshot in different times. So you'll see what happened and you'll look around the crime scene, you'll start working your way backwards from what you've seen, and you'll see what had happened earlier in the day. And it's such a fascinating concept. It's so fresh, it's so unique, it feels like nothing else I've ever played, but it is a ton of fun. This almost won my cooperative game of the year, but it was so different from anything I've ever played before. I felt like Innovative was where this landed. This game is so fun. It's great solo, but it's great with more players as well. The cases get hotter as they go, and to see all the different things in the map and see just things that throw you off and you go off on a tangent and see what happened in this story over here. Does this really tie to ours, or is this maybe a future story? Such a great, so innovative Micro Macro Crime City. Now the family game this year I am giving to Trekking the World. Now this comes from Underdog Games. This is sort of a spiritual successor to Trekking the National Parks, which was also from the same designer and company. And this game, it's essentially similar weight to Ticket to Ride, where you're drawing cards on your turn and you're spending those cards to kind of move around the board, move around the world, if you will. But this game's got some really cool things because you're moving with multi-use cards, which I love. So sometimes when you're moving, you're going to be using the card's numbers. But when you get to a certain place, you're going to be exploring and seeing all these cool things, and you're going to be using the icons and colors of those cards in order to have that experience, if you will, to gain points that way. But you're also, as you go around, there's different colored souvenirs that you can get as you're going around. So it's some set collection aspects where you're trying to get either a full column of all the different ones or have a majority, because if you get a majority, you'll have the most points, but that can move back and forth. So there's a lot of different aspects to the game, but it's still at its core a very simple game to get into, an easy one to teach, but has lots of depth. So if you like it, sort of a Ticket to Ride style game, this is one that feels somewhat similar, but that also feels very different at the same time because there's different things going on. Trekking the World, best family game of the year from Underdog Games. Immersive Game of the Year, this is a no-brainer. This easily could have been Cooperative Game of the Year as well, but I felt like this one was so immersive, and that's what made this game the best part. That's why it won this category. So here's a 1-minute overview of how this one works. Forgotten Waters is a crossroads game where each of you will be one of these 7 different pirates. And each of your pirates, you'll be actually building a backstory, and certain things will happen to that pirate throughout the game. The game is app-driven, and you'll be selecting one of 5 different scenarios to play. And each of those scenarios have different goals, like getting to this island, for example. But as you go, you'll have crossroad events where you have to decide what to do. And you'll be listening to voice actors tell you what's going on.
I see a lot of people on deck! More than normal! Passenger ship, Maysby!
The crew cheers at this, eager for plunder.
And your choices will be at the bottom. But wherever you end up, you'll be doing worker placement to take certain actions. But you'll also be managing cannons, the crew and the amount of discontent, the ship's hull, your supplies, the infamy track as to who gets to go when, and the threat track and your goals throughout the game. You'll also be tracking your ship and certain events that happen, and each scenario is done in 2 parts so you can save the game halfway through. Yet this game really makes you feel like a pirate. You get to choose one at the beginning of the game. They have this cool little backstory, and that story progresses as you go through the game. And the immersiveness really comes from the storytelling and the story and the arc of each of the different stories of campaigns in this. And you're going through, and the big thing here is the app and the voice actors. And that's why this game is so immersive, because the quality that went into these voice actors, you really feel like you're in the middle of the story, hearing what's happening. And it's just so immersive. You're going through the story, and even if you play, a couple cool things about this, why it's so immersive, is you're going through a story, and you can even play the same one more than once. Now, the general theme of what's going on and what you're trying to do won't change, but everything that happens between those big plot points is going to be different, and it's still so immersive. Hey, I'm going into some cloudy waters and maybe a ship. You go there and sure enough something bad's going to happen, right? Or you can go the nice way and something better is going to happen, right? But not always. But you really do feel like you're part of the game. So immersive. Forgotten Waters from Plaid Hat Games. Best co-op game is Chronicles of Crime 1400. Now this is based on the Chronicles of Crime system, which was a base game that came out a few years ago that really made a splash. It's such a cool system because you're trying to cooperatively solve a crime. You can play it solo, you can play it with more players, but you've got this sort of VR thing that happens where a couple of times in each case, you're going to be having someone look through your phone, either just look at it, or they have these cool little glasses you can snap on, and you're looking up and around, and you can actually, in total 360 virtual reality, look at the crime scene and tell other people what you're looking for and what you see, and they're all looking for these cards that match that, and you're trying to get that evidence to see if it's truly evidence or not. You're going around and you're talking. It's app-driven, the game, but it's very seamless as to how it works. Now this is basically a standalone game using that system back in the year 1400 in France, and it has its own standalone thing. You don't need the base game to play this, it's its own game, but it uses that great system which I've already loved, plus they've added some new mechanisms with the way the Greyhound works, which by the way, I have a Greyhound. I used to run a Greyhound rescue, so I love Greyhounds. That's really cool. There's a new mechanism in the game that adds to this, and there's stories that are all in that time frame. So if you like the original Chronicles of Crime, this is fantastic. If you haven't, you don't need to play the original to play this one. Best co-op game of the year, Chronicles of Crime 1400. Strategy game of the year for me goes to Whistle Mountain from Bezier Games. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this one works. Whistle Mountain is a worker placement, tile placement, and resource management strategy game for 2 to 4 players. You'll be flying one of your cool airships, the hot air balloon, blimp, or dreadnought to forge or collect. You'll be placing onto the grid or machines to gather all adjacent resources from scaffolding, like coal, iron, gold, and water. But you'll also activate the machine's abilities that you're on and ones that you're adjacent to. You'll also be flying to docks, which allow you to spend resources to perform different actions, like gathering machines, or scaffolding that you'll be placing in the future, or gaining cards that gain you cool abilities when played, like the treasure chest that gains you 2 whistles, which are wild resources, or gaining you upgrades. And these give you ongoing ability and endgame points. You can bring all your airships back to your board to forge, which allows you to move a worker from your barracks or rescue one from your whirlpool, which will be worth negative points at the end of the game. You'll be building scaffolding, giving you points for every adjacent scaffolding and machine. You can build machines onto scaffolding, first promoting workers there onto the tower for awards and endgame points, and the built machines gain you points too. But you have to be careful because as you build higher, the snow begins to melt, raising the water level higher and higher, waterlogging machines, making them useless, and flooding your workers to the whirlpool. You'll have to use timely and clever worker placement, forward-thinking tile placement, and ongoing resource management to win the game. Yeah, the reason why this one edged out Lost Ruins of Arnak, which is another great game. That one's from CGE. The reason why this one edged that one out is because not only is this a fascinating worker placement game where when you place your workers, you have the normal spots around the board that do certain things, but the big twist here is that you're creating new spots as you're placing those sort of Tetris-style tiles on the board. You're making the board for other players and you to go later and get resources and then build machines onto, and everything links together well. And the fact that you're building up this board, that every game feels so different because the board's gonna be built different, which gives you new opportunities, and those opportunities change depending on the different upgrade tiles that come out and the different starting abilities that you have. And the replayability of this game is off the charts. Every game feels so different because you're comboing different abilities with the different ways that the board looks, and it's like unlimited replayability. That's the reason why this one won Strategy Game of the Year, and it's just a fantastic twist and a refreshing twist on worker placement. That's why I won Strategy Game of the Year, Whistle Mountain. All right, Game of the Year. If you've watched me in the past years, you'll know that I don't release it here. Actually, that's gonna be released in the next video, which is gonna be coming out a couple days from when this launches, when I do my top 10 best games of 2020. Now, if you're watching this a little bit in the future, the link to that video will be below. If you're watching this the day or two after it launched, go ahead and subscribe below if you haven't. Click the little bell there. You'll be notified when that video comes out very shortly. Otherwise, this has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you love, and I hope you found some new games to check out. Lucky Duck Games has 4 new games available now. In the Court of Miracles, you lead a guild of beggars, scheme with sinister plots, and use trickery to build your own renown in an attempt to take over 16th century Paris. Baron Voodoo is an abstract strategy game involving the collection of thematic soul dice, and it made my top 10 most anticipated releases at Essen Spiel this year. Kingdom Rush Rift in Time is a tower defense with epic heroes that includes a campaign and an infinite replayability mode. It was hugely popular on Kickstarter, raising over $1 million. Chronicles of Crime 1400 is a standalone follow-up to the award-winning Chronicles of Crime, where you'll be solving 4 unique crimes in medieval Paris. These are all available in stores now, and you can learn more and order them at luckyduckgames.com.